that he does not desire to have me or any other attorney.
Your Honor, I know I have gotten some attacks from the government saying we playing games over here. I am not playing no game with my life being stuck on the line. And I want to put that into the record to explain my situation.
Mr. Schultz?
Your Honor, this is a ploy. It's ludicrous. The defendants know perfectly well that if Mr. Seal were to cross-examine witnesses here and argue to the jury, we would have a mistrial in 2 minutes. It's a game they're playing with the court.
In the view of the court, the defendant Seal is now represented by competent counsel. Mr. Kunstler, having filed his appearance in Mr. Seal's behalf, I find now to allow the defendant Seal to act as his own attorney would produce disruptive effect. The complexity of the case makes self-representation inappropriate. Motion will be denied.
I should be allowed to defend myself.
I will ask...
I should be allowed to speak so I can defend.
Quiet.
Don't tell me to shut up. I got a right to
Mr.
speak.
Seal, I admonish you that any outburst, such as you have just indulged in, will be appropriately dealt with. I must order you not to do it again.
In other words, you are saying you are going to put me in contempt of court for speaking on behalf of myself?
Will you be quiet? That is all. I will not argue with you. You have lawyers to speak for you.
They don't speak for me. I want to represent myself.
Mr. Marshall, will you go to that man and ask him to be quiet?
I still want to defend myself, and I know I have the right.
Be quiet.
Hey, man. I just want to let him know that. That racist. You know, the black man tries to get a fair trial in this country. United States government, huh? Nixon and the rest. Well, go ahead, continue. I'll watch and get railroaded.
I filled out a form from the National Mobilization Committee stating that I'd like to be a marshal for the Democratic Convention.
During this time, had you been otherwise employed?
Yes, as a member of the Chicago Police Department.
Oink, oink. Now, calling your attention to Friday, August 9th, 1968, in the morning, where were you?
I went to the National Mobilization Committee headquarters. Bernie Davis was there, David Dellinger, and many other people. Mr. Davis said that there would be many demonstrations throughout the city, and the purpose of these would be to stretch the police force out. He said we would block traffic going down the street. We would block people from going in and out of buildings. We would smash windows and generally try to shut the loop down. Lee Weiner said that the marshals would probably wear helmets, and John Freund said that we should break up into small groups, and these groups should be violent. Everyone in the group agreed with this, and Abby Hoffman is at this meeting.
Do you see Mr. Hoffman here in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Would you point him out, please?
He shot me with his finger. His hair is very unkempt.
Now, on Tuesday, August 27th, where were you?
I was in Lincoln Park, and there was a rally going on.
Did you recognize any of the speakers?
Jerry Rubin gave a speech, Phil Oakes sang, and the person who identified himself as Bobby Seale spoke.
I object to that because my lawyer is not here. I have been denied my right to defend myself in this courtroom. I object to this man's testimony against me because I have not been allowed my constitutional right.
I repeat to you, sir, you have a lawyer. Your lawyer is Mr. Kunstler.
He does not represent me.
Now, you just keep on this way, and...
Keep on what?
Just sit down.
Keep on what? Keep on getting denied my constitutional right.
Will you be quiet?
Now, I still object. I object because you know it's wrong. You denied me my right to defend myself in this courtroom. You think black people haven't got a mind? Well, we've got big minds, good minds, and we know how to come forth with constitutional rights. I'm not going to be quiet.
Are you getting all this, Miss Reporter?
Yes, sir.
I hope you got my part for the record, too. Did you get it, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And that outburst also.
I think you should understand that we support Bobby Seale in this. At least I do.
I haven't asked for your advice, sir. And please continue with the direct examination.
Now, calling your attention to Wednesday morning at National Mob headquarters on the 28th of August. What was said by who?
John Freund was talking about how he'd purchased butyric acid and that he's done it before or in hotels and restaurants. He said it works really well in restaurants because butyric acid smells like vomit. He talked making tear gas, Molotov cocktails, mace, and other devices. Then David Dellinger said, it looks like we're not going to have to march on the amphitheater, but we should have a march anyway to use it as a diversion to get people out of Lincoln Park.
Out of which park?
Grant Park. I'm sorry.
Mr. Ferran, do you believe one word of that?
Your Honor, may the record show the comment from the defendant Dellinger?
Yes, Mr. Dellinger has made several comments from time to time. The record may...
I asked Mr. Ferran if he could possibly believe one word of that. I don't believe the witness believes it. I don't believe Mr. Ferran believes it.
And continue to take his words. I admonish you, sir, not to interrupt this trial by your conversation or your remarks. You are not permitted to speak while your competent lawyer represents you.
Hello, Daddy.
I want to make a request, Judge Hoffman, that my wife be let in with my son. The marshal has attempted to harass her.
Mr. Marshal, you take care of the request as far as admission to the courtroom is concerned.
In other words, my son can't come in, right?
Mr. Marshal, I have not addressed this man. Will you undertake to see what he wants and do what is fair under the law? Cross-examine?
You were expelled, were you not, for throwing a university professor off a stage physically?
No, sir, I was not.
What were you expelled for?
I was expelled for being with the group of people that threw the president off the stage, sir.
Now, when you were participating in these discussions, is it not true that you were receiving pay from the police department of the city of Chicago?
That is correct.
By the way, prior to your coming into this courtroom, how many discussions did you have with the United States Attorney in this case regarding your testimony?
There were about 3.
And is it not true that Mr. Foreign said to you that your previous reports and testimony did not implicate the defendants enough and that you should elaborate a little bit?
No. No, he didn't.
No further questions.
I would like to cross-examine the witness.
You have a lawyer here.
That man is not my lawyer. The man made statements against me. Furthermore, you are violating Title 42 United States Criminal Code because it states that the black man cannot be discriminated against in his legal defense. Hey, did you see me make a speech in Lincoln Park? Mr. William Properly, did you see me make a speech?
Mr. Marshal, will you ask that?
Did you see me make a speech on August 27th, Tuesday, supposedly August 27th, Tuesday?
You didn't answer any of those questions. Let the record show.
Let the record show that you are violating my constitutional rights. I want to cross-examine the witness.
Sir,
I want to cross-examine the witness.
Contemptuous conduct.
I admonish you. I am not in contempt of nothing. You are the one in contempt. You are in contempt of the constitutional rights of the mass of people in the United States.
Do you want to listen to me?
Why should I continue listening to you unless you're going to give me my constitutional rights? Let me defend myself.
That the law states.
Why don't you warn me? I have the right to defend myself.
I'm warning you that the court has the right to gag you.
Gag?
I don't want to do that.
Gag?
Under the law, you may be
Gag?
gagged.
I'm being railroaded already.
The court has the right, and I am telling you that
the court has no right whatever. The court has no right to stop me from speaking out on behalf of my constitutional rights.
The court will recess until tomorrow morning.
Everyone will rise.
I am not rising. I am not rising until he recognizes my constitutional rights. Why should I rise for him? He's not recognizing my constitutional rights.
See that he rises and that other one too.
Mr. Hayden, will you please rise?
Get all of the defendants
Get up.
to rise. And let the record show that the defendant, Mr. Hayden, has not risen. Mr. Kunstler, will you advise your clients to rise?
The court, please, it is my understanding that there is no legal obligation of the defendants to rise so long as his failure to rise is not disruptive.
You advise your clients not to rise, do you?
If Your Honor will direct me, I will advise them.
I direct.
Then I will pass on your direction. I will now pass on your direction to them. They have heard you direct me. They cannot in good conscience do more than that. They are free, independent human beings who must do as they please.
Let the record show that none of the defendants have risen. The court will be in recess, Mr. Marshal.
This was an American first.
Here, all done for a second. Your Honorable Judge, Julie, stay off and all rise.
Everyone does, but at 8, they don't get up. Oh, the Empire's like, the whole world's just collapsed.
It upset me and made me pretty pissed off.
that this fool can't see that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States says that every person has a right to have legal counsel of choice, what have you, etc., in a courtroom while going to court. Now, what's wrong with you? I mean, here's the rule. And if you violated the rules, you were violating the tenets of share and share alike and doing the others as you would have them doing it. That's what you were doing.
Brothers and sisters, we got a real situation going on up in here. Now, I want you to understand and appreciate the fact that you got a right to observe this trial and see what's going on. Am I right?
Right.
But I don't want you cats out there to get upset and emotional and start doing anything that's out of the ordinary. Am I right? If anyone attacks us, you know what to do. We defend ourselves. That's a principle of the party. We defend ourselves whether they have guns or not. We defend ourselves. If they make us leave the courtroom, we just leave. But be cool, because I got to do this myself.
Right on.
Your Honor, there are 25 marshals in here now, and they all got guns.
Your Honor, we are objecting to this armed camped aspect.
It is not an armed camp.
Military state.
If the court please, before you came into this courtroom, if the court please, Bobby Seale stood up and addressed this group, and he told these people in the audience that if he's attacked, they know what to do.
You lying. I told them to defend themselves. You a rotten, racist, pig, fascist liar. I told them, I said, if they were attacked, they have a right to defend themselves. And I hope the record carries that, and I hope the record shows that Tricky Dick Schultz is a liar, and we have a right to defend ourselves. And if you attack me, I will defend myself.
If the court please, that is what he said, just as he related.
You're darn right.
Let the record show the tone of Mr. Seale's voice was one of shrieking and pounding on the table. That'll be dealt with appropriately at some time in the future.
The record should indicate that Mr. Schultz stood at this lectern and raised his voice quite loudly in this courtroom.
Yes, I think he raised his voice. If what he said was the truth, I can't blame him for raising his voice.
Why don't you recognize my constitutional rights?
I have recognized every constitutional right you have.
You have not. I want to cross-examine.
All I have to tell you is this. If you speak once again, we will take such steps as are indicated in the circumstance.
If you try to suppress my constitutional right to speak out, then I can only see you as a bigot, a racist, and a fascist, as clearly indicated in the court record.
Mr. Fineglass.
Wineglass.
Wineglass. Will you please continue with the cross-examination of the witness if you desire to?
Now, you testified that you spent a lot of time, I believe, with John Freunds, one of the defendants in this case.
Sometime, yes.
Isn't it a fact that you know from what John Freunds told you that he doesn't even know how to make a firebomb or a Molotov cocktail?
You said he didn't know how to make a Molotov cocktail.
I have nothing further.
I want to request again, demand that I be able to cross-examine the witness. You got Benjamin Franklin and George Washington sitting up there in a picture behind you, and they were both slave owners. That's what they were. And you are acting in the same manner by denying me my constitutional right.
Mr. Seale,
See,
I have admonished you
right
previously
to defend myself in this courtroom.
what might happen to you if you keep on talking. Young man, if you keep this up...
Look, old man, you being exposed to the public and to the world that you do not care about people's constitutional rights to defend themselves.
Have him sit down, Mr. Marshall.
Why don't you recognize my constitutional right? I have a right to defend myself. I have a right to cross-examine the witness, man.
Show the court, please.
I want
the
my
marshals
right
are putting
to defend
Bobby
myself.
Seale in the
I
seat,
still have
putting
a
him in
right
the
to
chair.
defend
The
myself.
defendant
I want my
Dellinger
right to defend
physically
myself.
attempted to
I want
interfere
my
with
right,
them,
my
pushing the marshals
constitutional
out of the
right
way.
to defend myself. I have that right.
Will you, Mr. Marshall, have that man sit?
Record show, the defendant Dellinger is doing it again, the same thing just
I
now.
saw it myself.
Your Honor, the overall umbrella of intimidation is denying these defendants any chance of a fair trial.
Your Honor, I have never in 20 years of practice heard lawyers like Mr. Kunstler and Mr. Wineglass refuse to direct their clients to conduct themselves with courtesy and decency in the courtroom. As lawyers, our major obligation is our oath to uphold the law. And if the law is to be changed, then this government offers opportunity to change law by law and not by disruptive tactics.
Can I say something to... Can I say something to the court?
No, thank you. I have been called a racist and a fascist. He has pointed to the picture of George Washington behind me and called him a slave owner.
There were slave owners.
As though I had anything to do with that.
And you got him up there?
He is known as the father of this country. And I would think that it is a pretty good picture to have in the United States District Court.
We all share a common guilt, Your Honor.
I didn't think I would ever live to sit on a bench and be in a courtroom where George Washington was assailed by a defendant and a judge was criticized for having his portrait on the wall.
All I am saying is that these defendants are not for disruption, they are for peace.
Say, what about Section 1982, Title 42 of the Code, where it states that a black man cannot be discriminated against in my legal defense in any court?
Mr. Seal, do you know what...
The law protects my right. Why don't you recognize that?
Mr. Seal, do you want to stop? Or do you want me to direct the march?
I want to argue the point about this so you can come to an understanding about the fact that I have a right to defend myself.
Take that defendant into the room in there and deal with him as he should be dealt with.
I still want to be represented. I still want to represent myself. I want to represent myself. I got a right. I got a right. I got a right.
The court will be in recess for a few minutes.
Your Honor, Mr. Seal would express his willingness to be quiet. Will the court entertain the possibility of Mr. Seal being unbound and ungagged?
I have tried so hard with all my heart to get him to sit in this court and be tried fairly and impartially. And I have been greeted on every occasion with all sorts of vicious invective. Mr. Seal, all of your constitutional rights have been and will be preserved in this trial. I assure you that if you have any evidence, when the time comes, we will listen attentively. If you will assure the court that you will be respectful and not cause disorder, I am willing that you resume your former place at the table. Will you, sir? If you will give me your assurance, will you please indicate by raising your head up and down?
Give me your assurance that
I can't understand you, sir.
I want to defend myself. I have the right to speak on behalf of our Constitution.
Mr. Marshall, I don't think you have accomplished your purpose by that contrivance. We will take another recess.
I want to speak on behalf of my constitutional rights. You can't deny me my rights. You can't deny me my constitutional rights.
Bobby Seale's only attempt in that courtroom was an attempt to represent himself.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I must tell you the law requires that the judge maintain order and take such steps as are warranted. Accordingly, the marshals have endeavored to maintain order in the manner that you see here in the courtroom.
Your Honor, I move on behalf of the other 7 defendants for the immediate removal of the gag and the arm and the leg cuffs. Mr. Seal was only attempting to assert his rights to self-defense under the Constitution.
I direct you, ladies and gentlemen, not to hold it against any of the 7 other defendants when these measures are taken with respect to defendant Mr. Seal. These measures indicate no evidence of his guilt or lack of guilt.
The marshals would take an hour, maybe 2 hours before the trial began, trying to force this gauze into his mouth.
I said, no, man. No, man. I said, man, what the fuck going on? No.
What are we trying to prove, Your Honor?
We won't go in there and sit in the trial while Bobby Seale is bound and gagged.
Meanwhile, Bobby and the Panthers are saying, don't do anything.
Mr. Frappoli, you indicated to the prosecutor that you received instructions from your superiors not to participate in any violent actions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, do you consider the forcible removal of a president of a university from the speaker's lectern a violent action?
Len.
If Your Honor, please, the buckles on the leather strap that's holding Mr. Seale's hand is digging into his hand. Could he be assisted?
The marshal concludes that he needs assistance, of course.
Your Honor, are we going to stop the medieval torture that is going on in this court? Your Honor, this is no longer a court of order. Your Honor, this is an unholy disgrace.
Created by Mr. Kunstler.
Created by none other than you.
Why don't you come down here and watch this, Judge? Fascist dog! You lowlife son!
Somebody go protect him! Your Honor, may the record show that that comment was by Mr. Dellinger.
May the record show that Furren's a Nazi?
And that is Mr. Rubin speaking.
Everything you say will be taken down.
Your Honor, he's being choked to death! Cruel and unusual punishment! You're a fascist dog, Judge! You know, if you're gonna gag him, why don't you just kill him? How's that?
You are not permitted to address the court, Mr. Hoffman.
This isn't a court, it's a neon oven!
That was the defendant Hoffman who spoke.
This disruption started when these guys got into overkill. Don't you see it's the same thing as last year in Chicago? This is the same thing!
Mr. Hoffman, you are ordered to refrain from speaking. Mr. Seal, you mind looking over here? I would like to get from you, sir, your assurance as an American citizen that you will not be guilty of any disruptive act during the continuance of this trial. May I have your assurance? Let the record show that the defendant did not reply.
If Your Honor, please.
What is it, Mr. Weinstein? Weinberg.
Wineglass, Your Honor. If Your Honor, please. Mr. Seal was endeavoring to answer the court by writing, so I would like to read the note that Mr. Seal has written. I want and demand my right to defend myself.
I am calling for an end to this. I don't think you have seen it in your experience, nor have I in mine.
He is being treated in accordance with the law.
Not in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, which is the supreme law.
I don't need someone to come here from New York or wherever you come from to tell me that there is a Constitution in the United States. Why should I have to go through a trial and be assailed in an obscene manner?
But, Your Honor, that is the reaction of a black man not being permitted to defend himself. If you had said defend yourself, none of this would have happened.
I have lived a long time, and you are the first person who has ever suggested that I have discriminated against a black man. You don't know me, sir. But I am as good a friend of the black people in this community as they have. And if you don't believe it, read the books. Come into my chambers, and I will show you on the wall what one of the great newspapers of the city said editorially about me in connection with a school segregation case.
Your Honor, this is not a time for self-praise on either side of the lectern.
It isn't self-praise, sir. It is defense. I won't let a lawyer stand before the bar and charge me with being a bigot.
For God's sake, we are seeking the solution to a human problem, not whether you feel good or bad.
That black men and white men can walk down the same...
That third day was a scene, but it caused me not to be gagged the fourth day.
The court has done its best to prevent the repeated efforts to delay and obstruct this trial. As we all know, the defendant, Bobby G. Seale, has been guilty of conduct in the presence of the court of so grave a character as to continually disrupt the orderly administration of justice.
That's a lie. I stood up and spoke on behalf of myself.
You are making it very difficult for me, Mr. Seal.
You are making it very difficult for me, Judge Hoffman.
I find that the acts, statements, and conduct of the defendant Seal each constitute contempt of this court, a deliberate, willful attack upon the administration of justice, and accordingly the defendant Seal will be committed to the custody of the Attorney General for imprisonment. Mr. Seal, you are free to address the court on the question of your punishment.
How come I couldn't speak before?
This is a special occasion.
If you're talking about putting me in jail, I have nothing to say about that. I have something to say about the fact that I want to defend myself still.
The court will be in recess.
Wait a minute. I got a right. What's this cat trying to pull now? I'm leaving I can't stay? I demand an immediate trial right now.
I'm sorry, I can't try two cases at the same time, sir.
I have a right to go through with this trial. I want an immediate trial. You can't call it a mistrial. I'm put in jail for 4 years for nothing. You gonna put me in jail now? I want my coat. Free Bobby! 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 Free Bobby!
This was the human spirit winning over the overwhelming power of the state. They just couldn't shut the guy up, so they chucked him, got him out.
I'm assigned to the subversive unit. I joined Veterans for Peace. I'm on the executive board of the Chicago Peace Council and the steering committee of the new mobilization.
While a member of these organizations, were you in your undercover capacity as a Chicago police officer?
Yes, sir, I was.
Would you relate to the court, please, what you heard at the meetings at which you were present?
Well, Ronnie Davis said that the people should have a wall-to-wall sit-in in front of the Conrad Hilton. They could break windows, pull fire alarm boxes, stone police cars, break street lights. Mr. Rubin said that they could start fires at the Loop. Mr. Freund said that they could purchase ammonia and throw this at the police. Lee Weiner said that they could let the air out of tires or jam up traffic. Tom Hayden said that if the city doesn't give in to our demands, there would be war on the streets. Mr. Dellinger said that we should have the march, and when stopped by the police, we sit down and practice the old forms of non-resistance and non-violence.
That's like indecent exposure, doesn't it?
Mr. Kunstler is laughing so he can influence the jury with the impression that this is absurd.
It is absurd. It is. He's a vaudeville actor.
I like being here. This is very interesting.
That is the best statement I have heard here during this trial. You said you enjoyed being here?
Sure. It's good theater.
Oh, isn't it a fact that what makes your memory so accurate today is the 14 hours you spent in discussing your testimony with the prosecutor?
Objection.
I sustain the objection.
Now I ask you, officer, to look at the 7 men at that table. Isn't it a fact that in the entire period of time that you spent with them in their company, at their meetings, the streets, the park, that you never saw one of them commit a single act of violence? You never saw any of them strike a policeman.
No, sir.
Did any of them ever throw a rock?
I don't believe I saw it.
Did you ever see any of them break a window?
No, sir.
Did you ever see any of them making a firebomb?
No, sir.
Little incidents were breaking out quickly between police officers and members of the crowd. They were spitting and shoving and pushing and fighting. And the officers responded and they charged the crowd and the crowd charged back. And a serious disorder broke out.
Isn't it true that you heard the National Guard, or somebody in the National Guard, was trigger happy and released tear gas while the crowd was proceeding orderly out of the park?
I have no recollection of hearing that. The thing that continually crossed my mind is this unlawful assembly in the street. That was foremost in my mind. I had no intention of permitting a mob to take over the street.
Now, did there come a time when nightclubs were used on the people?
There were some. Some use of night batons, yes.
There was quite a lot, wasn't there?
I don't know. Quite a bit. There was some.
Did you yourself see any night batons land on people's heads?
Oh, yes.
Isn't it true that you saw the Chicago police officers beating people while they were already on the ground?
In some instances, yes.